Hello again and welcome back to The Front Row, a minor production of the First Congregational Church in South Beacon, where our intent is to bring snippets from our Sunday morning message into your week. I'm talking a little bit faster today because it's going to be very hard to include all of this in our final message for the week. But we are concluding our conversation around case in point, the story of Joseph. Joseph in the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. But before we get to the end of that story where it all works out fine, you know those times in life when a few years later, you're laughing about something. Oh, remember when such and such happened? But in the moment, it was harrowing. It was disastrous. It was downright scary. Well, similarly, we have this bias when we read biblical stories, and the story of Joseph is no different. It's a treacherous, evil story. But we look at the end when Joseph is introducing his dad and his brothers to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is giving them choice land in Egypt. It was wonderful. You could almost laugh about how they got there. But I don't know how you would do that when you're in the middle of it. And that's the difficulty of living this life unoffendable. So we're looking at the story of Joseph and saying, okay, how did he do it? What happened there? Because when we look at his story, we could see how he could be completely resentful of his brothers, resentful of his father, resentful of the fellow cellmate that made him rot for 2 years. Real quickly, let's go through the story. So, Joseph is son number 11 of 12. He has 10 older brothers, 1 younger. He's the favored son. His father Jacob loved him so much he gave him this amazing coat. And then he had a couple dreams where his brothers and his father bowed down to him. He told them about that dream, and they were not happy. Dad was pretty upset, but his brothers grew in hatred of him. So much so, they were out working in the fields, and Jacob sent Joseph out to see how they're doing. And when they saw Joseph coming, they plotted to kill him, to kill their own brother. They threw him in a pit, grabbed his coat, tore it up, threw some blood on it, and were going to tell Dad that he got eaten by a wild beast. Then one of the brothers got a great idea. Hey, wait a minute. We could get rid of our brother and make a little money. See that caravan that's going by? Let's sell him into slavery. So they not only plotted to kill him, but then they decided to sell him into slavery, to take him from this life of wealth and prosperity and opportunity. And now you are going to live the rest of your life as a slave, because that's what happened in those days. If you were sold into slavery, you, your spouse, your kids, anybody associated with you will be slaves for life. Think of the insights of your future that change from this place of prosperity to now the life of a slave. But he makes the best of it. And he serves well. And he is right there with Potiphar in the most amazing leadership of Egypt until Potiphar's wife turns on him. And now, because according to her story, something inappropriate happened, now he's thrown into a dungeon. And so betrayed yet again, falsely accused in the dungeon. And this is not some cozy prison cell. The dungeons were designed so that you barely survived. You got just enough bread, just enough water, just enough to survive because they wanted you to suffer. He was there for a while with no hope. And then he interprets a couple more dreams, and one of them is going to go back and they're going to go back and report to Potiphar, and one of them is going to have Potiphar's favor. He's like, hey, tell them about me, that I helped you. Maybe that'll give me some cred. I don't know. But he was still in that dungeon for 2 more years. Now think about month 3, month 9, month 18. Nothing's going to happen. The despair that could overflow you. The bitterness that could start to rise in you. Well, that of course turns around when Potiphar has a dream. He comes and interprets that, and it's about the 7 years of famine, 7 years of feasting. And Potiphar, because he had this innate trust in him anyway, and saw his wisdom in interpreting his dreams, decided to put Joseph in charge of managing, taking those 7 years of feast and preparing for the 7 years of famine. He does it swimmingly. Pharaoh looks great. And then eventually we get to the part where his brothers come and visit because they need food. They embrace, bring dad, introduce to Pharaoh, and then we get to the end of the story. Now, what allowed Joseph to survive? What allowed him to embrace his brothers? What allowed him to invite his dad and his brothers into the company of Pharaoh? How do you do that? They plotted to kill you. They sold you into slavery. You spent time in a dungeon because of all these people. The only way that you can move forward in relationship to your family and to all these people that had such a negative effect on your life is if you completely release all those offenses, if you're unoffendable. Joseph is an example, a model of what it means to live unoffendable. I encourage you to study his life, to read Genesis chapters 37 through 50, to put yourself in his shoes, and to see what you can learn from reading about what it means to live unoffendable. We'll come back to it next week with another story, but for now, blessings to you. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye-bye for now.